in our flow chart over here. Remember, we're on the vendor side of things in the cycle. This is, by the way, the desktop flow chart. I'm using it for online purposes because it's a flow chart and all accounting systems are basically the same. It's just giving us the arrows so we can see what is happening. So if I'm using the bank feeds, I have to think about how it's going to integrate, and you want to think of it by cycle. How is it going to integrate into the vendor cycle, the customer cycle, the employee cycle? Remembering the vendor cycle is usually the easiest cycle to integrate into. So if I can say I'm going to make all electronic transfers and for everything I pay, utility bill, the phone bill, and so on and so forth, then I could use a check type form instead of a bill payment type form, not actually physically enter the transaction when I make the payment, but wait till it clears the bank and depend on the bank basically entirely to create our bookkeeping system. We don't have as much assurance doing that because really for a full bookkeeping system, we want to enter it and then the bank enters it and then we reconcile, giving us an internal control. However, it's a lot easier to just let the bank do it and then pull it into the system. And that's going to save time and hopefully give us the information we need for end of the year financial reporting and taxes. So let's see what that basically would look like. If we go into the transactions tab over here, that's where our bank feeds are located. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to close up the hand boogie. We're in the first tab, the transactions tab. You have your checking account here. So this is what I would call bank feed limbo. And what's going to pull in here from what I would call bank feed limbo is going to be from the decrease side of things, the amount of the payment. If it was an electronic transfer or check, we would have that. It's going to be the date. Now, if it was a check, the date's going to be far after the date that we actually physically wrote the check. But if it's an electronic transfer, it'll be very close to the day we actually made the payment. So that's why it works well for electronic transfers. And if it's an electronic transfer, we might have information in the memo. Oftentimes we do. That memo information might not be specific or perfect, but it often will give us the information necessary to determine who we paid with the transfer. In other words, it'll have Verizon if it was a telephone bill. It'll have, whoever our Spectrum or whatever our cable company is in the memo. We can take that information and use it to give us the one key piece of information we don't know in order to record the transaction. That's going to be the category, otherwise known as the account, such as telephone expense, utilities expense, and so on. And it's going to give us the information that we might not necessarily need to record the transaction, but should be putting in place so that we can track more information if we need to, that being the payee, or in this case, the vendor who we paid the money to, so that we can track by vendor item. So let's first think about